Hello and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project. And today I have an amazing guest with me. His name is Calvin Bagley, and he has a powerful story of resilience and turning pain into purpose. He is a healthcare entrepreneur, Medicare broker, thought leader advocate, speaker, and Amazon best-selling author who went from having no education as a child to earning a business degree at 34. Today, he is the founder of several businesses which have positively impacted the lives of tens of thousands of people. His published memoir is titled Hiding from the School Bus, which tells the story of growing up in poverty, isolation, religious extremism, and navigating an education system which wasn't built for kids like him. Calvin, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Cheryl. So good to be here with you.
Your story absolutely just blew me away. It's an incredible story of resilience, overcoming obstacles, childhood trauma, and really turning that horrible pain into purpose. So I'm just going to stop talking for a few minutes and just ask you to share your story with the listeners.
Yeah, like everyone's story, it's difficult to share it. I mean, there's so much nuance and there's so much detail. I mean, and you hit all the highlights there when we started, but part of probably the main thing that people just have a hard time grasping is the idea of this kid growing up, in the 80s, and I was born in 1975. Growing up in the 80s and not participating in any of the culture, not being allowed to go to school, not having any education, literally learning to read because my sister taught me, and hiding from the outside world, living in this religious extremism, all mixed together. It's really hard to explain. And so people meet me today and they think, I'm very normal. I don't seem like I am odd or anything like that. And I don't think that I am. I definitely think I'm a little different, but, and it's hard to imagine where I came from, that it was kind of like growing up in the 1880s instead of the 1980s. So that's kind of the beginning of my story, is just growing up in this really odd place, not participating in culture and education and anything, and going all the way through what would be high school without any
Wow.
education.
See, and I think that's part of your story that just really grabbed me because I couldn't wrap my head around that would even be possible. And, the hiding from the school bus, when I first saw that, it was like, oh, this little boy didn't want to go to school. But
Yeah,
apparently
right.
this little boy didn't have a choice.
No, I was hiding because my parents told us to hide. I literally hid. And, the first time that I coined the phrase hiding from the school bus, I was actually in college in my, 20s, which it's quite a story of how I got there. And I was asked to write a creative essay about an experience that I'd had. And so I wrote a story about hiding from the school bus for my professor. And she was just blown away, saying, "What on earth?" And not having any idea of where I'd come from. My parents called it homeschooling. I call it no schooling.
Hmm.
And they didn't want people to report us to Child Protective Services. So we literally hid when we heard this. I was out in the rural area, very far away.
Hmm.
Not many cars passed our home in a day. When a car passed our home, we would hear it coming. We would look out there, look out the windows, or hide behind a bush and see it coming. And we were in the middle of nowhere.
Wow.
But the school bus came by to pick up the farm kids, and we hid from the school bus. The one place that we had interaction with people was at church for a couple of hours on Sunday. And then
Hmm.
other than that, we were just completely isolated.
And you have quite a few siblings, correct?
Yes, there were nine siblings, so eight siblings and me, nine kids, and my
Mhm.
parents living on 5 acres in the middle of nowhere,
Wow.
with fields and farms all around us. Our nearest neighbor was a couple miles away, and then after that, a couple more miles. And the problem with that, when you already have some extremist tendencies that my parents had, is that nothing keeps you in check, and you just
Mm.
get further and further and further removed from reality, and that's what was happening.
So did anybody at church know that you weren't going to school, or was this kind of like a thing for that area? It's like, well, not everybody goes to school.
Everyone went to school except for us. And the people at
Wow.
church did know we went to school, but we would put on a display as best we could at church.
Mhm.
My parents always made sure that we had the one nice nice clothing that I had was for church on Sunday. Other than that, it was just, whatever rags we had. And we were
Jeez.
very, very poor. I mean, extremely poor. It's hard to explain poverty of that level in today's world, but we grew our own food.
Mhm.
There were many times that when I was very young, we didn't have running water. We used an outhouse.
Mhm.
We were just extremely poor, and I was afraid at many times that I wouldn't have enough food, which I often didn't have enough food. But we
Mhm.
we were just living in a world that is just unrecognizable for most people. And then we would go to church and pretend to be the perfect family. Everybody gets along, smiling, happy, wear my best church clothes. So we did put on a display at church for
Mhm.
those who were there.
So they never suspected that things weren't as normal as they were, as it appeared.
I wouldn't say that. I think it was very suspicious, and most people knew that something was wrong.
Mhm.
I just don't think they understood the degree to which things
Mhm.
were wrong.
Mhm. So when was it that did you have a hunger for wanting to read, or because somebody gave you a school book or a textbook? I don't know if
Yeah.
that was your sister, but
Well,
she's the
let
one
me tell you
that
how that
started the ball
happened.
rolling. Okay.
My sister, I had wonderful older sisters, and by the way, my parents had moved out into the middle of nowhere, and so my older siblings, I'm number seven.
Uh-huh.
And my sister, who was most important to me as a child, was 14 years older than me. And so she had attended some schooling and she learned how to read and had learned basics of, math and science and reading and what have you. And so there was some education to my older siblings. By the time I
Hmm.
came along, all of that was gone. And but there was, I talk about church and how my parents were trying to make sure that everyone thought we were normal. Because we were supposedly homeschooling, there was an alphabet across the top of our living room. And when I was about 5 or 6 years old, I inadvertently memorized it backwards because I wanted to learn to read. And so I learned it, Z, Y, X, W, V, U, T, S, R, Q, P, O, N, M, L, K, J, I, H, G, F, E, D, C, B, A.
Oh my God.
And my sister, not the one I said before, but my third sister, she loved reading. And so when I was 7 years old, I told my mom, I really want to learn to read. And
Hmm.
she said, I think you're old enough. And so she assigned my sister to teach me, my third
Hmm.
sister. And my third sister helped me learn the alphabet properly and taught me to read using a phonics course.
Hmm.
And I was actually excelled at reading, given that I had very little instruction.
Hmm.
And the one place that I would read was we would read, in the Bible and other things
Hmm.
and read at church and the scriptures. And so
Hmm.
that was my education as a child. Other than that, there were no school books, nothing at all.
Wow.
And along here also, I should say that my parents had a lot of really extreme kind of religious beliefs that kind of mirrored polygamous in Utah, which is where we
Hmm.
grew up. Although my parents were not polygamous, we were, we 9 kids with my two parents, as far as I know. But we I was able as a young kid to kind of separate my parents from God.
Mm.
Most of my siblings didn't make that separation.
Hmm.
And when they left home, which most of them ran away from home and rebelled in every way they could, they abandoned religion along with my parents. But for me, I always felt something different, and I really felt connected to God. And I was able to kind of separate my parents. And I'm not, you know, saying anything bad about my siblings. They coped in the
Hmm.
ways that they coped, and I coped in my way. And
Hmm.
um, so when the reason I tell you that is that when I was 19 years old, that is the time when and I was a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which I still am today, the Mormon Church, as commonly called. At 19, you go out on a mission. Well, now it's 18,
Hmm.
but when I was a kid, it was 19. So I really wanted to do that, and that was the first big breakaway for me. Was saying I'm going to go. I'm going on my mission, and I received in the mail my mission call, and it said, you have been, because you get assigned where you go, and it says, you
Hmm.
have been assigned to serve in Brazil. And and you're going to learn to speak Portuguese. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I'm going to Africa. and, and then someone explained to me, no, Brazil's in South America. I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm going far away. This is great. And so I had to learn to speak Portuguese, and I went to the Missionary Training Center in Provo, Utah, and I spent 2 months there learning Portuguese. And honestly, that was my first education because learning Portuguese taught me English. I learned what
Wow.
a noun was. I learned what a verb was. I learned how to conjugate, verbs and for how sentence structure function and things. And then all throughout my 2 years in Brazil, which were incredible, and I write some great stories about that in my
Hmm.
memoir, all throughout those 2 years, I studied Portuguese and became very, very good at speaking Portuguese and consequently became very good at English. And so
Hmm.
at 21, I returned home with this new confidence that, I had learned a foreign language.
So when you did return home, I mean, we were going back to your family, did they recognize the change in you? Did they see that confidence that you were just, newfound confidence and understanding of how the world works?
Yeah, I think it frightened my parents. I returned
I'll
home
bet.
and I said to my dad that I wanted to get a GED. I was 22, 21 years old at this point. And he said, what do you need that for? You need a piece of paper? You need someone to tell you that you're smart? And so he was not supportive. And
Mhm.
I studied. I got a job working at a pawn shop, which was I don't write about that, but that was that I could write about that. It was fun. And I I purchased a book to study for the GED at a
Mhm.
bookstore in this little town that I was working in. And I was living at home still. I'd travel. It was like 40 minutes away to travel home and then
Mhm.
go to work every day through these country roads. Um, and I was studying at night, the GED, and I studied for many months. And then I went and took the exam and I passed. And I was so proud at almost 22 years old to
Mhm.
now have the equivalent of a high school diploma. Although my
Mm.
parents, had no praise for that and did not were not supportive of it. But then I
Mm.
was like, okay, now I have this goal of going to college. No one in my family has gone to college. Actually, my oldest sister that I told you about, she had gone, but she had dropped out.
Mhm.
She had failed at it, and so I was like, I am going to go to college. And all of these, missionaries I'd known on my mission, they were all going to BYU, and one of them was going to Stanford, and all these places. And I was like, I think I can do it. So the next thing I tackled was the ACT exam.
Mhm.
And so I got an ACT study book and I tried to study on my own for months. And the month of my 22nd birthday, I took the exam and just bombed it. I mean, failed it miserably. I was so distraught, devastated. Didn't I tried to go to the local like community college in this
Right.
area I was in. I couldn't even get accepted there. They needed more, this, that, and the other. So I was like, oh, I was just dejected. And my brother, who had run away from home when he was 16,
Mhm.
was now on his second wife, even though he was only like 22 or something. And she was wonderful. She had gone through a college. She was a registered nurse. She was an educated woman, and he and his wife Julie invited me to move in with them all the way down in Las Vegas. The city of sin. My parents were devastated
Wow.
that I did it. I moved from my little town down to Las Vegas with the hope that I can study my way with the help of my sister-in-law and get into college.
Okay, I have just got to ask, what was that like going from? I
Oh,
mean, I've never even been to Las Vegas, and my husband kept saying, "Oh, we ought to go, we ought to go," and I'm like, "No, he's been there for conferences. That's good enough. I just have no desire." But
yeah.
to go from this little town where you're pretty isolated, of course, you at least had been to Brazil, so you had a little bit more worldliness about you. But going to Vegas, that must have been such a culture shock.
Oh, it was amazing. I loved it. I loved it. And people know Las Vegas for Sin City and the casinos and everything like that.
Mhm.
But when I moved to Las Vegas, um, I realized there's a huge population of faith-based people here. There's all kinds of real life. I mean, it's kind of like the yin and the yang.
Hmm.
there is a balance here, believe it or not. And I've lived in Las Vegas pretty much well, kind of a little off and on, but pretty much since then,
Hmm.
1997. And I have grown to love this town and love the people here, even though there's a lot of challenge.
Hmm.
So it was amazing. I moved to Las Vegas and it was like I am in this big city. For me, it was a huge city, you know. Back then it was a little smaller, but I couldn't believe it. It was like pinch yourself, you know.
Hmm.
I've gotten away from my little small town and I'm making it in the
Hmm.
big world.
Hmm. Good for you. Well, I felt that way when I'm from a small steel town in Western Pennsylvania,
Okay.
which is why I ended up moving to Denver just a few days after graduating college. And I lived there for 47 years. And for
Mm,
almost all of those 47 years, I would pinch myself. I can't believe this is where I'm living. And then things started to go really south in,
mm,
Denver and Colorado. And it's like,
mm.
we can't live here anymore. So we moved
Oh,
to a small town. This is small, a really small town in Missouri of all places.
oh, I love Missouri.
It's,
That's great.
well, I didn't know much about it. I knew it existed. That was about it. And my husband's family, his parents actually lived here years and years ago. I think it was in the late 60s or whatever, and spent 10 years here. And so that was just, he has friends here. So that was why we ended up here. And I mean, I really like it. It's been a challenge and but it's great. The people are so nice that for the
Yeah.
first 2 months that we were out here, we've been out here now 7. The first 2 months, I was always looking over my shoulder, going, "Why are you so nice to me? Where's my wallet? What's going on here? What do you want?"
Yeah, you know, I just saw a graph just yesterday showing that the states where people have moved to and the states where people have moved from. And for many, 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 many years, Colorado was a state everyone was
Yeah,
moving to. But you know what? It has changed. There
yeah,
are more people leaving than coming now, which is
yeah.
sad to say because it's such a beautiful place. But
It is a beautiful place, but it's pretty much been ruined. But yeah, I think it's the first time in Colorado history that more people are leaving than are moving in. And I really feel
yeah,
sorry for the people who are still there who might feel a little bit stuck because I mean it's hard to move when you're especially, maturing and at a certain
yeah,
age. But it's like, and that's what we came to the point where if we don't leave now, we're gonna
we'll
be
never
stuck
leave.
here. Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
bye-bye. We just voted with our feet and took our tax dollars with us.
Good for you.
Yeah,
Well,
thanks.
when I came to Las Vegas, you know, it was like the land of opportunity for me, and I made so many wonderful friends. And in Las Vegas, it was big enough that you could go to church, and there would be churches just for singles. So I would go to a
Wow.
singles church where the entire congregation were all singles, and it was so fun. And so it's not what you imagine moving to Las
Right.
Vegas being. It was actually a really great experience, and so much so that I'm still here today. Although I did leave for a while because when to kind of put a caps on the story, my sister-in-law helped me to get
Mhm.
math books because math was so foreign to me. I just did not. It's a language I did not speak. And so we bought grade books 3 through 12, and I would study them, and she would come home from her long hospital shifts and would help me through stuff that I'd struggled to figure out. And and then once I was pretty comfortable or confident there, after several months, then
Mhm.
she explained to me how college works with admissions and registering for
Mhm.
classes and everything like that. And she helped me to set up an appointment to see an admissions counselor at the
Mm.
University of Nevada, Las Vegas. And so I went in there. I sat down with this admissions counselor. I explained to her my story briefly, being homeschooled. I called it homeschooled back then. Now I say it's no schooled, but being homeschooled, having gone to Brazil, learning Portuguese, feeling confident that I could learn things. I just need someone to give me a chance. And she said, um, I'm very inspired by what you're saying. I want to give you a chance, but you don't fit in any of the boxes. But there is
Mhm.
a way we can do this. You
Mhm.
can come as a non-admitted student auditing
Mhm.
classes. You will be graded, but they won't count towards a degree. You're just,
Mhm.
and like anyone can attend to audit a class. If you successfully get through 2 semesters with passing grades, then we will admit you as a student.
Mhm.
And so that is how I got into college. And I relied heavily on my sister-in-law.
Mhm.
I studied very hard. I lived at the library and
Mhm.
I successfully passed my classes. those 2 semesters and was admitted into UNLV. But it was really difficult to have all
Yeah.
that structure. I'd never experienced structure like that before, you know?
Well, first of all, I just have got to tip my hat to your dear sister-in-law. What a wonderful woman. I
Yes.
don't even know who, don't know her, but anybody who would go out on a limb and really, help, their brother-in-law like that and give you that kind of support that you probably never really had. I mean, obviously the structure, how to do it rather than, start from the back of the book or the back of the alphabet and go backwards, go the other way.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, she was an angel. And when I got into college and just, I have to thank her, and I still thank her to this day so much for that. I mean, I wouldn't have gotten there without
right.
her. There was just things that I could not overcome on my own. It required the help of
Mhm.
others.
hmm So now, then you did get admitted, and did you go
Yes.
directly into the business program or the business curriculum?
Yeah, I did start business, but I was just doing generals. After
Okay.
3 semesters, I was kind of overwhelmed by the structure of it, having never sat in a lecture, having never taken tests, having, like the
Yeah.
first time I ever used a Scantron, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Or they would say, make sure that you bring, what are those books called back in the day to write essays in? I can't remember what those
A
books were called, but
journal or?
yeah, it was like a journal. Well, no, it was like the exam books. You had to write answer exam questions in, and I showed up. I didn't have one. Someone loaned it to me. I didn't know what this stuff was. You
Right.
were supposed to buy it at the bookstore, and it was
hmm
an exam book, and I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I really struggled honestly with structure, and I'm not the most structured person today.
hmm
The world is always happening all around me all at once, and I'm not like a linear thinker. I'm more of
hmm
a holistic thinker. And so after 3 semesters, I kind of bailed on school for a while, and I'd
hmm
heard about uh, I heard about being a flight attendant, and I was like, I want to do that. I want to fly all over the world. So I took a hiatus and became a flight attendant and started
hmm
worked for United Airlines,
hmm
and it just had all these incredible experiences. And for me, that was like my, even though I was in my mid and late 20s, that was like my growing up teenage years where I
Oh
just
yeah. Oh
was
yeah.
experiencing the world.
Yeah, that would be an eye-opening experience for sure, just being a flight attendant.
It was another really incredible experience, but it came to a sudden end on 9/11 when the terrorist attacks of 9/11 happened. I had been a flight attendant for about 4 years, and I knew not close friends, but I knew people that died that day. My friends were stranded all over the world
hmm
for a while, and everything changed, and it was like this, like I feel like God had been telling me for a while, for a year or two, that I needed to go back to school and in
hmm
my words, take life more seriously. And I don't mean that being a flight attendant isn't serious. I just knew
hmm
that for me, I was supposed to get through school,
hmm
and I was afraid to do it, and it
hmm
was hard.
hmm
But after 9/11, it was that really, earth-shattering moment, and I said,
hmm
no, I need to now do the things that I'm supposed to do. And I moved back to Las Vegas from Chicago,
hmm
and I returned to school, this time in earnest, and worked through the business college. During that time, I met my wonderful wife.
hmm
We were married. She was a professor at UNLV, not my professor. that would have
I was
been
going to say
that
that's
would have been a nice
convenient.
way. Yeah, that would have been a nice way to get good grades, but I guess it doesn't work that way. She was a professor at UNLV. I worked my way up in banking and was a branch manager at Bank of America, and finally graduated from college
hmm
um, there at 33, the summer I was turning 34.
What a nice birthday gift for yourself.
Thank you.
Wow, what a story. You know what, but that does speak to the power of resilience and determination and never giving up, but giving yourself the grace to be able to step back for a while when you knew you needed it,
Yeah.
rather than just beating your head up against the wall, and until you just, give up.
Yeah. It it is hard to give yourself grace, and I appreciate you saying that because, no matter how much you accomplish, sometimes you
Mhm,
look to yourself and say, "Oh, I'm not doing enough," or I failed here and there. And
mhm,
also, it takes at times this willingness to step out into the dark and do things you've never done before and face the consequence of that. For me, sometimes it was saying something really stupid and embarrassing. Like, I one time was talking with someone and they were talking about the Holocaust. I
Oh,
did not have any idea what they were
oh,
talking about. So if you could imagine the kind of ridiculous things that I have done or said in the past that so now I have spent my life trying to catch up to the point
right.
that I've exceeded so far that I'll like stay up at night and read Wikipedia, but because you have these experiences when you're putting yourself out there that you do something that other people will not understand or might ridicule. And
Hmm.
it's hard to do that. And I can't say that I'm always good at it, but I can say that I've done it enough to to be able to accomplish things that were maybe beyond what was in the stars for me from where I
Hmm.
started. Starting my own
Hmm.
business, graduating from college, being, married and having my two kids. I guess anybody could maybe do that. I don't know. It wasn't as easy for
Not
us.
always. Yeah.
But being striving to be a loving dad and to raise my kids differently than they were raised and to break generational trauma and things like that. Like you have to go out on a limb to do some of these things.
Mm-hmm. Do your kids know your story of growing up, or did you kind of cherry pick the
I
details?
I have whitewashed it a little bit
Mm-hmm.
because my son is 14, turning 14 this summer. He's 13. My
Mm,
daughter's 8. They're a little young for some of the facts of it. They
right.
haven't read the book, but they know many of the stories.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay, so now how did you get into the, healthcare system? Hang on a second. Let me just double check. Healthcare entrepreneur. Was it because of your experience with your sister-in-law and her being a nurse or whatever? How did that little transition happen? Or what was the little trigger that started that path?
Well, I would say a couple of things. First, I've never, as you can imagine, I've just
Hmm.
never been normal. And so,
Yeah.
you know, entrepreneurship and, building your own thing was kind of always in the cards for me. I always believed that someday I would do that. But when I was in college and professionally, I was working in banking after I
Mm,
left being a flight attendant. And so my entrance into healthcare actually came through the financial side. I left Bank of America. I had risen through the ranks and now was managing multiple branches in California actually.
mhm,
And I left to start my own financial company. And we did several financial things. Were managing money for people. We were doing insurance and life insurance, that led into health insurance and into Medicare insurance. And so I actually came into kind of the healthcare space through the insurance and financial side.
mhm,
And the company that I founded early in the beginning kind of split into multiple pieces to
mhm,
to specialize. And so
mhm,
we manage money for people under one company. We help people with their Medicare under another company, and really specialize in different areas. And then since
mhm,
I've begun to invest in and to be a part of startups that do things in lab testing, helping people,
mhm,
to do lab testing. After COVID, we realized that lab testing needs to be faster. And so we're applying some of the lessons from that time using fast lab testing for other things like wounds and UTIs and things like that. And so
mhm.
I began to get involved in other aspects of healthcare. So yeah, it was kind of this roundabout way that went from
Yeah.
banking into financial into healthcare, and just me always seeing opportunities and starting something new and trying to solve problems.
Well, and you have to say, out of, tragedy comes success or whatever. But when you mentioned, okay, from 9/11, it was a huge turning point in, not only in your career, but in all of our lives, just in
Yes.
this country. And then, following how many years later in walks COVID. I mean, out
Yeah.
of all of those tragedies, there were little bits of, I guess, pieces of light that kind of came out of it.
Yeah. I would share with you what I share with a lot of people is that the past is what you make of it and what you define it. You can change the past in the present.
Mm-hmm.
And the way you do that is you give it a different meaning. And so, those were terrible things.
Mm-hmm.
With 9/11 was just this massive tragedy. COVID was probably even a bigger tragedy, and a lot of it we brought on ourselves, and just
Mm-hmm.
so many people died. Um, this might be very controversial, but if you understand what happened and you read and you have an open mind, you realize that probably more people died from the cure than the than
Mm-hmm.
the virus. But like these tragedies happen, and we can and for me in my personal life there were tragedies, my upbringing and my lack of education, the abuse that I endured. You can go back and turn those into positive things, because if you look back and you say, I'm a victim and there's nothing I can do because of all these things that happened to me, guess
Mm-hmm.
what? You're right.
You're a victim. Yeah.
If you look back and you say, I can overcome and I can be the hero in my own story, then guess what? You're right. You can be the
Mm-hmm.
hero. So be very careful and intentional about, what you just, how you define your own past. And
Mm-hmm.
then be very, be intentional about how you define the events of the past too, because you don't want to lie. But like, be intentional about what you define as what the meaning is for you, because you can change your present based on how you define your past.
Well, first I want to ask about the book, but before I do, I want to ask, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. Um, did your parents, when they're watching you, like, get a college degree, start working, in these businesses? I mean, were they around to see that? Were they supportive? I mean, what was their reaction, or like, how's this kid learning all this stuff?
Yeah, my dad has passed away. My mother is still living. She's 86,
Oh.
and not as aware of what's happening now.
Mm-hmm.
But as my father aged, he really began to have challenges with dementia
Mm-hmm.
and with Alzheimer's. And before that, he was very judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
When and so this is kind of goes back to what I was saying before, with the things you can see good come out of really challenging things. Before my dad had dementia, I graduated from college. My dad and my mom did come to my college
Mm-hmm.
graduation, and my dad said that the big black robe looked satanic. He called it the robes of Satan. Um, and so, but he wasn't like overtly, it's the kind of stuff he would say to me, but he wouldn't say it to my in-laws who were there or things like that,
Mm-hmm.
But this is the way he viewed things still.
Mm-hmm.
But when he started to lose his mind, he actually became very kind,
Wow.
which is kind of sounds opposite, right? And I feel like in a way his own mind was getting in the way of his natural being, maybe, because he was very complimentary. And the last maybe 6 or 8 years of my dad's life, he would say he was very proud of me.
Wow.
It actually makes me a little bit emotional.
Yeah.
He would say I had a lovely wife and a beautiful child. He did get to meet my son before he died.
Mhm.
And he was very, I don't know, it was really nice. He would hug me and
Mhm.
things. Before that, I can tell you that from the time that I left home until the time that my dad lost his mind, he called me once on the phone during those, I don't know, 20 years almost. And
Wow.
at times I would call and I would say, hey, I would talk to my mom, but I
Hmm.
asked to talk to my dad, and he'd say, oh no, long distance is expensive. Mom will tell me whatever. Or he'd get on the phone and say, I hope, just like a brief conversation if I'd ask for him. But we just didn't talk. And so this is a long way for me to say that it was actually kind of like a, a, a silver lining to a dark cloud, my dad's last years.
Hmm. Wow. Wow. That's, again, your story just continues to blow me away. So then when did you decide that it was time to write a book? Because writing a book is really not for the faint of heart.
Yeah. You're definitely putting yourself out there, which is what I
Yeah.
wanted to do. When hiding from the school bus, I was always hiding, and I hid most of my life. The whole time that I was working at Bank of America, while I was going to mostly while I was going to college, while I was building my company, everything. I didn't want people to think that I was inferior, or I was always trying to
Mhm.
catch up. I didn't, I don't know. And so you hide and hide and hide and hide. So that the word hiding has a lot of meaning to me because it really
Mhm.
was about me opening up and sharing what I have overcome with the world,
Mhm.
whether it's received positively or negatively or whatever, however it's received. And so this really came about when I had, in one aspect of my life, I had accomplished things that I felt like
Mhm.
it was at a point where I could show the whole arc of my story in a way,
Mhm.
um, for my 50th birthday. My wife
Mhm.
and I traveled to Antarctica, and I
Mhm.
was and it was my visit to the seventh continent. I'd been to all seven continents. I've been to all 50 states, traveled all over the world. I have my wife and my kids. I've graduated from college, and I've rebuilt my faith in love instead of fear. Like all these things have happened. And then my father passed away, and then my sister, who taught me to read, passed away of
Mhm.
cancer. And I just felt like I was ready. And my wife had encouraged me many times to write a book, she being a college professor. And
Mhm.
so it was time. And that's what made me feel like it was time to do it.
As you were writing it, what was going through you? I mean, was it difficult? Was it therapeutic? Were there times when it was like, I can't believe this happened?
Yeah. Um, a mix of those things, but if I had written the book in my early 40s, I think there
Mhm.
would have been a little bit more anger in the book
Mm.
because I had not worked through emotionally some of the triggers and the pain and the trauma. So
Mhm.
before I wrote the book, actually, I'd been working with a therapist who I trusted and who I love and has been amazing for me. And he was kind of helping me deal with some of those emotions. So that by the time I wrote the book, I feel like that was something I kind of left out, was that I had to an extent healed
Mhm.
from some of the traumas. And so
Mhm.
that was also what made it right.
Mhm.
But when you write your book, even if you've healed, you still have scars. And so I did experience pain. And many times I have read and reread and reread and read what I've written
Mhm.
and have felt the emotions of it and cried and what have you. But the beautiful thing about writing your own story is that you do now have an opportunity to see yourself in the hero's journey
Mhm.
and to see the arc of your own story. And that was very, very powerful.
Mhm. Did you have any writer's remorse at all once the book was published?
No, I really haven't. There, I'll tell you that the things that I felt that I would have remorse for,
Mhm.
in writing about, whether it was about experiences that I had with siblings or my parents or what have you, that were just, I mean, it's a harsh book, especially the
Mhm.
first, 4 or 5 chapters are very harsh.
Mhm. Mhm.
But believe it or not, I left things out that I thought I would regret
Mhm.
writing. So it's still strong. It's not for everyone. It opens with my dad, um, literally murdering a cat. And many people you'll see you'll read about there the notes that people have written, or the reviews. Some people say I couldn't get past that first chapter. Um,
Oh.
be, but I felt like I had to tell the story as it was. But believe
Mhm.
it or not, I still shielded some things.
Mhm. Oh, I believe that. I can understand. Yeah. Wow, what an incredible story. So, where do you see yourself now? Like, I mean, you've got this incredible life, these businesses, everything's going well. You're a dad with two great kids and a wonderful wife and a sister-in-law who, is amazing. Where do you see yourself in the future? I mean, what is your hope for what's next, the next chapter? I mean, you're a young man. You got
Yeah.
a lot ahead of you.
I definitely feel very young. You turn 50 and you look back and say, I don't feel any different than I did when I was like maybe 27 or something. I don't know, not 18, but I don't know exactly what the future is. I love building things, and so I'm always building things. I've gotten very deep into building things with AI and vibe coding and all these things that are happening. So I love to build things. Um, but what with the book, I just what I when I put it out,
Mm-hmm.
I guess I just completely was open to say,
Mm-hmm.
here it is. I've put it out in the ether. It's in the universe. If it is a, a story of my life that is shared by my kids and grandkids and great grandkids, then
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah.
If it is received by the world and people read it and it affects them and has a positive impact on them, then I'm also happy. I'm just open to what occurs. I was blown away when it became an Amazon bestseller and has been read
Mm-hmm.
by thousands and or listened to by thousands of
Mm-hmm.
people. That really was incredible. Um, but what the future holds is I'm just open to it and trying to open my heart up and not be hiding anymore.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. Geez, what a story. Again, you just blow me away. And, you're such an inspiration. Thank you for being here and thank you for sharing the story. And, you're a warrior. No doubt about that. You are a
Thank
warrior.
you.
Well, is there anything else? Oh, I know what I want you to do. And I probably should have told you this before we started recording. I knew I forgot something. I have all of your links, all of the information where people can find you in the show notes, and it's going to be there forever and ever and ever, or at least as long as I'm alive. And I've got a great website, specifically for the podcast. But I really like for the guest to be able to articulate how the listeners can get a hold of you, reach out to you, where they can get the book, how to find you, anything that you want to promote. Now's your time. I really think that it's important for the guest to be able to have that opportunity because it gives a little bit more of a warm, fuzzy, feel to the
Yeah,
listeners,
I
more
appreciate
personal.
that. You know, um, my book has a website, hidingfromtheschoolbus.com.
Mhm.
You can remember the title, you can find it, or just, if you just Google it, hiding from the school bus. The website's interesting because it has some pictures and some things from the book. So you can actually go and see real pictures of where I was living and the things that were happening and what my family looked like and everything. I really shared a lot on there. It also has links to purchasing the book, which is available anywhere that you buy a book, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. The Audible book, I'm very proud of the Audible book. If you've been listening here saying, I don't know if I could listen to Calvin's voice for 8 hours, don't worry, I'm not the one that read it. I hired a professional. That's a whole skill. Yeah, audio, reading an audiobook, they're voice actors, and he was incredible. So I'm very proud of how that turned out. Um, I can also be found on calvinbagley.com, or you can
Mhm.
look me up on socials. I'm happy to connect with anyone. And yeah, that's where you find me.
Do you have any pearl of wisdom or little nugget that you want to leave with the listeners before we wrap it up?
Yeah, absolutely. What I would say, kind of the crux of my story is that where you came from doesn't define who you are.
Mm.
You can be the hero in your own story, in your own journey. Whatever has happened to you, I'm at the point in my life where I love who I am.
Mhm.
And yes, there were accomplishments and things along the way, and I'm very proud of my accomplishments.
Mhm.
But even without the accomplishments that I've had, I would say that I've learned to love myself.
Mhm.
And so if you love yourself, then you can let go of all the things that have happened in the past. Let go to a certain, let go of the things that happened to you
Mhm.
because don't be defined by them,
Mhm.
and understand that who you are today, you are because of those things. So I wouldn't be who I am if I
Right.
hadn't been forced to hide from the school bus, if I hadn't, suffered abuse and trauma and things as a child. I wouldn't be who I am. So I don't want to go back and change those things. I don't want them
Mhm.
to happen to my kids, and I want to
Mhm.
change my future. But I accept all those things now because that made me who I am, and I'm at a point where I love who I am.
Mhm.
So that's what I would encourage for any listener is to love yourself. And when you love yourself, you can just accept those things that have happened to you. And then you
Mhm.
can use them as a platform instead of a whole.
Well, Calvin, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for spending your time with us and sharing your powerful story. And I mean, again, it just blows me away. I have a hard time wrapping my head around it, but it's such an honor to have you on the show and an honor to talk to you.
Thank you, Cheryl. It was great speaking with you as well.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening. Please share this episode with everyone you know. Again, it's such a powerful story and so many life's lessons in every single bit of this conversation that I think we can all learn from. And do remember, learn how to love yourself with all your heart. And that is the way of the FemiNinja.